So Graham, let's start the last part of our interview about how you engage with what you hear from the Divine Truth teaching, and about your experiences with it. And personally, when I first discovered Divine Truth, I felt like I got it all right. I understand everything, and I felt like in a honeymoon period, and I feel like I know better than others, and they should listen to me, and all these things. And I ask about that. I see that a lot with people that listen for the first time, and before they have any feedback, or they don't know themselves very much. It's very common, and my question is, what would be your advice to someone who has just discovered Divine Truth for the first time?
I think you just need to be careful that you don't start reading stuff into it that's not actually there. Be aware that you tend to colour and filter what you see and hear. And there's a tendency to fit what you see and hear into your own belief systems and modifying it to fit, you know. And so, you know, it's often said that people watch a video of AJ or something, and they feel like they get a real lot out of it, and then a couple of years later they watch it again and they feel like they get something completely different out of it. And well, what's the difference? It's the person, you know. So it shows you that you're open to some things and not open to other things. You're ready to hear some things and not ready to hear other things. So you have to be aware of the fact that no matter how good the teaching is, you're still going to be colouring and filtering it through your own system. So you can misunderstand bits and get it wrong, and you can also get caught up in wishful thinking. You know, I think you need to make an effort to stay grounded, and you need to experiment with it and try it in your own experience. You know, rather than just, oh, this sounds good, I think I'll believe this. You know, I think you need to do a bit of experimenting rather than just taking on some belief that just because you like it.
Yeah. Okay. What mistakes have you done out of self-deception in your own journey that you have learned the most from and would like to share for the benefit of others?
I think it's about believing you're in a better place than what you actually are. When I started, I wanted to believe I was here, but now I believe I'm there, you know. So I think we all, most of us anyway, want to believe we're more loving than what we are. We're not as injured as what we really are, you know, and that makes us not quite so open to hearing those sort of things. And that's what you need to be really careful of is what's going on within yourself, you know.
Well, do you have regret for that, or?
Well, I don't know. To some extent, it's a learning experience. You know, sometimes you can get it wrong and spend a couple of years doing the wrong thing, thinking the wrong thing, believing the wrong thing. But that very experience you might get to the end and go, oh, there's something wrong here, oh, this is not working or anything. You might have to get to that point before you're open to hearing the real story, you know. Previously, you might not have been very open to it, you know. So it's not ever completely wasted, even if you do get it wrong.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. What means living the way in your present understanding of divine truth, and are you living the way to God?
God's way.
Yeah, God's way.
The way God intended for us to find our way to God. To me, what it means is being open to look at my law of attraction and what's going on in my world and exploring it to discover God's laws, because God's laws is in everything, and sometimes, but the same laws might apply in completely different situations. Like, let's see, you might find something that's happening in your garden, you know, like you might have weeds growing in your garden. And you go, oh, I don't like these weeds, these are horrible, these are not what I want to grow. So you pull all those weeds out. And then you may read something and discover, weeds actually are creating soil and are actually doing some good things there, you know. And so maybe I'll let the weeds grow because they shade the plants around them and they provide a bit of protection, you know. And maybe even company, you know, plants might like company, you know, companion plants and things like that. And the roots all intertwine and there's fungal interactions in the soil and bacterial things, and the weeds are all involved in that. So the weeds actually are affecting the soil and changing the soil, which may be beneficial for the plants around them. So you can learn that, there's laws of nature that govern all this sort of stuff. And the interesting thing about laws of nature is that they tend to be what's called fractal, which means that they're applicable to in other situations and at other scales. And so you might go, oh, well, I wonder if this is applicable in my own spiritual growth. What would a weed be, the equivalent of a weed be in my own spiritual growth, you know? A false belief, you know, a bit of self-deception, stuff like that, you know, and you might go, okay, I don't like the false beliefs, I'd rather not have the self-deceptions, but hey, maybe it's not so bad having them there because they actually are improving the soil and making me more ready to hear the truth, to hear the real truth, you know. So I think those sort of things are useful.
And would you consider like living the way that you are living the way to God? Like,
I think that it depends where you are. You know, we're all in kindergarten, really, and the way for a child in kindergarten to progress is not the same as a way for someone at university. You know, in university it's very directed. You know where you're going, you know what you've got to learn, and you're just in doing it. But when you're in kindergarten, you can't do that with a kid in kindergarten. In kindergarten, it has to be involved in play and letting the kids do what they want to do and letting them make mistakes and stuff up and break things and all that sort of thing. And I think, so God's way can be different for someone in our condition, which is basically pretty low condition, to what it is for somebody higher up. And so I think in that sense, you know, I might not be following God's way that I would be following if I was further up. But I think I have the desire to progress. You know, I've been doing that all my life. And I think I've come to the conclusion that the desire is the most important thing. And it has to be desire from your soul, not desire from this. Very often we think we want, this is what we want, but when you get in and do it, you don't get results and it doesn't all happen. So really, we've been working against ourselves, you know. It's like that thing that people put on the wall, you know, I am happy and healthy and wealthy and wise, you know, and if you read it often enough, you'll start to believe it, you know, but it doesn't do anything. You know, so I think we need to be a little bit careful with God's way that we don't do the same thing. You know, for me, it's like I'm in kindergarten. I need to be able to make mistakes and stuff up and have wrong beliefs and all that sort of things. And I think that God intended us for us to go through that process, you know. And in that sense, I think I'm roughly approaching God's way. But that said, I think we always go off on sidetracks. You know, it's God's way is a very narrow path, you know. And the only way you find out where the path is by going off to the side and going, oh, fallen off it, I'll come back. You know, the danger is when you believe that you're on it. When you believe you're on it, you can go gradually go off to the side, and because you've got this belief that you're on it, you suddenly discover that, oh no, I haven't made any progress for 5 years. You know, and then it's like, oh, what have I done wrong? Where have I got to go? You know, but if you're just a little bit more gentle with yourself, you can just allow yourself to follow this, but be open and aware, so that you can go, oh, that didn't feel good. Maybe I need to just correct myself a bit here. Oh, that didn't work. Maybe I should just do a little bit of that. You know, so I think my feeling is that God's way is. You know, God's way might be like that, but to stay on that path, you have to go like this to know where it is. Otherwise, you can be on a straight path and go that way when God's way is really this way. Yeah. You know, so I think I'm sort of doing that sort of thing. You know, I go off on sidetracks, and you know, some of those sidetracks might be very big. You know, I can have some big beliefs about myself that aren't correct. You know, and I might go for years in one direction. And then something comes along and you go, uh-oh, you know. But I think that's all part of God's plan.
Okay, thank you. Have you already received personal feedback from A.J. Miller and Mary-Luc? Well, I know you shared, yes. Can you share us about what about and how it has been helpful? And have you been challenged or angry about it? Well, and you have received probably many times, but if there is some feedback that you think about has been really interesting or beneficial and that might apply to others.
The most interesting one was when I reached a point where I felt like I was making no progress. And I was just coming to that realization when somebody else who'd been talking to AJ, and AJ happened to mention me to say that I was stagnating, and she mentioned to me, actually in an unloving way, she was using it to put me down, but she mentioned to me that AJ had said that, and even though she was trying to put me down with it, for me it was, wow, I'd just come to that conclusion myself. It's really great to get AJ's verification of my own feeling, and that was really good to get that.
It is, but I guess it's very rare to have a feedback on something we already know. It's quite unusual.
I've had feedback on things that I can't relate to or seem wrong. And what I've done with it is just, I remember it. So rather than going, that's wrong, I don't believe that, I sort of go, okay, I'll keep that in mind, you know, and that sort of keeps me a little bit more open-minded to, at some stage in the future, it could be years down the track, when I've changed a little bit, I'm a bit more open or something like that, and then I can just remember that feedback that AJ gave me, and I went, yeah, maybe he was right after all, you know. So I think it's important to remember the feedback, and even if you don't believe it and you think it's wrong, to still remember it.
Be open to
be open to it. Yeah.
Have you had some time of feedback that first felt like, well, I don't relate to it at all, and later you discover, now it starts to make sense?
Not in a big enough way to say, to really give you, this is a good example of that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, it, this is a question about, you know, we all got raised in a family environment, and our parents got a definition of love, basically, and we received this definition of love, and it's different from what God feels about love in many respects often. But then we take on it, and unless we start to look at it and have a desire to really question it, we will pass it on to our own children, and it will continue generation from generation. We will continue to believe the same things. And my question is about, and it will happen until someone in the family line will start to be question more about it, that it might be not the truth, maybe something wrong there. And so in your own experience and family, what have you learned from the toxic or wrong definition of love in your own family environment that you have a desire to change? Or
well, the thing that comes to mind, like I don't have children, so I haven't had the opportunity to pass on errors.
But it influences all people around us as well.
The biggest thing for me is that because my mother's love, what she called love for me, was rather suffocating and needy, and I got the feeling that love was something I didn't want. I associated this feeling of neediness and wanting something from me as being associated with love, and that for me has created an enormous impediment towards love, and an enormous impediment towards allowing myself to be loved by people, and also an impediment towards me opening up to love, opening up for my own love, you know, because this emotional, it's not an intellectual thing, because I know intellectually it's wrong, but emotionally I just feel this discomfort when somebody appears to be acting lovingly towards me from man's perspective.
Okay,
I never get it with AJ.
Yes.
I never get it with him, because he's not acting in man's definition of love. He's acting more in God's definition of love. So I've never felt that never felt really uncomfortable. Sometimes I haven't felt like some of the things he said to me might not be quite right or things like that, but I've never felt like he's come from an unloving place.
But that's a man again. You are speaking more from women. What about Mary, for instance? Do you felt
I've never had those sort of interactions with Mary to really be able to say.
So, would you? I try to understand what you said a bit. So, when a woman is kind of mothering toward you and wants something from you, like your definition is that's love, but you don't like it.
Yeah, well, you know, what I feel is the discomfort of the neediness and the demand of an emotional response.
Yes.
You know? A woman can have a partner can have an emotional demand on you. They want you to open to them. They want you to do all this sort of emotional stuff, not sort of go out and take the garbage out, but much more emotional sort of stuff, you know. And that to me feels bad, and so I tend to doubt them as to whether they really love me.
And it's unloving, so there is nothing wrong about that, because indeed it's quite unloving.
Yeah.
But what about real love? How do you feel when someone really love and care for you, but do not expect, like you were talking about AJ? How does that feel for you in you?
It's very rare.
It's very rare. Yeah.
I think the vast majority of people are rarely acting in coming from real love.
So you have never felt this real love, like a woman who didn't want to take something from you? And
Well, I think I have an injury there where I tend to, like, I know if you've got an injury with respect to that, sometimes you see it when it's not there, you know. So it's possible that sometimes people have had real love for me, and because of my mistaken emotional belief about love, I've seen it as neediness when maybe it wasn't.
Maybe you don't trust also
I don't
real
trust,
love.
I don't trust that it's real love. I doubt their love.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Do you know what is your biggest challenge or major problem, injuries right now to deal with in order to grow happier and freer from pain?
I feel that life is a struggle. That's being honest, because there's been lots of times in my life where I didn't feel that way. And there was either self-deception or the circumstances were such that I didn't see it. But now, being honest with myself, I do feel like life's a struggle, and that changes my attitude to everything in my life. And interestingly, my guide has given me a couple of glimpses of what it's like when you actually desire, when you're actually coming from desire. That all the difficulties evaporate, and it suddenly becomes, or it can become, easy and enjoyable. And the reason it's not is because of the crap within ourselves. Like, I have this thing within myself where even if I'm doing something which I know I have a passion for, I can feel a discomfort and not really enjoy it because of an emotional injury with respect to my father, where my father sometimes thought that I should be doing something else, you know. Even if it's something like, when I was a child, I could be in watching TV on the weekend, and my dad would come in and go, "What are you doing in here watching TV? You should be outside playing." You know, it wasn't as if he was demanding, wanting me to do something for him, but he still felt that what I was doing, what I got was that what I'm doing, any choice I make to do what I want is not really worthwhile, that there's something else I should be doing. So I can be doing something that I know I'm passionate about, but I can't enjoy it as much because I get this niggly feeling that there's something else I should be doing, you know, and that pulls the rug out from under my real enjoyment of something which I know I'm passionate about, you know. And I feel like if I could work through that, my attitude to life would completely change.
And have you an idea what is it that you need to work through to go through that? Or what is the next best things that you...
Well, what I'm feeling is that firstly it's all about desire. I have to have the real soul-based desire, and that desire is often not there. If I'm honest with myself, that desire is often not there. It might be here, but it's not here. And if I say, oh, I have this desire, therefore I'm going to work for it, all this other stuff comes up, and I don't get the fulfillment that I should. But if it comes from here, it's going to be really good. So, to that respect, I've really gone back to the beginnings of what AJ teaches. Really, it's all about just cultivating a desire to feel. Because my issue with Asperger's is all about not feeling. And so I have to have a desire to feel, real, genuine desire to feel, even if it's something uncomfortable and unenjoyable. And my guide has helped me see a way through that. And that's that I did a lot of prayer for a couple of years about asking God to help me tell the difference between my real emotions that are coming from my soul and the emotions that are coming that I'm creating. You know, often we have an emotion in our soul that we don't want to feel, so we create an emotion on top of it that buries it. And And so I've asked God to show me, that help me discriminate between my real feelings and emotions and the emotions and feelings I'm creating. And the really interesting thing is the result of that couple of years of prayer, I've started to get this, there's a different flavour to emotions. That there's the emotions that I create are intended to disconnect me from the world, from myself and from the world. Or a part of some sort of wishful thinking thing, which is still disconnecting you from reality. Whereas the real emotions, I find that if I'm in a real emotion, it connects me to everything. And I feel like I'm more part of everything, you know. And I'm learning to tell the difference. I'm still in the early stages, but I'm learning to tell the difference between these two types of emotions. And that's been really useful. And because then, once I can feel I've got a real emotion, then the clue is that's the seed of a desire. And with respect to those emotions and feelings, it can be like, it's a bit like if you're wearing virtual reality head glasses and you're in a computer game. You know, you can be in there interacting with it and it all feels real and you're all doing this wonderful stuff and all these things are happening and it can seem horrible. You know, you're getting killed and all these things are happening. And then you take the glasses off and you get to see what reality's like. And there's a wonderfulness about reality compared to the artificialness of the stuff I'm creating. So I'm learning to distinguish between the wonderfulness of feeling my real emotions and the artificialness of the created emotions. And that wonderfulness of real feelings and emotions, even if they're uncomfortable feelings and uncomfortable emotions, that wonderfulness can still be there. And that can be like the seed of the desire. That it's like this tiniest little seed that can go, that you can sort of work on to connect to that seed. And so another analogy my guide has given me is a garden analogy. Like, once you've got the seed, finding the seeds is a hard bit, but once you've got the seed, you have to put it in a suitable environment and create an environment for it which is conducive to growth. So you have to be careful, because you can overwater a seed and kill it. You can over-fertilise a seed and kill it. And there's absolutely no point standing over it and going, grow. You know? And this is what I was saying about God's laws being applicable to nature and also within myself. And so when I can get those tiny little seed of a desire, I then have to figure out, well, what's the environment for that? And it's not trying to push it, because you can't push a seed to grow. It's just about getting out of the way, really. It's more about what you don't do than what you do. You know, most of the time your imagination gets involved and your willpower gets involved, and you're trying to force it. You know, as soon as you do that, it's like overwatering and over-fertilising, you know. So you just have to trust that I trust that God has built into me. You know, I'm not reliant on AJ. God has built into me everything I need to be on God's way, independent of AJ. AJ is just a bit of a guide to point out some of this stuff and to give me stuff to experiment with, you know. And so I just have to be gentle with myself and allow that seed, try and just be gentle with it. Try and feed it in whatever way you can gently and easily do it, without trying to force it and without pushing it, you know. And so you've got to have patience as well, you know. And I feel like that little seed, it's just growing slowly. And of course, seeds never grow as fast as what you want. You know?
Except weeds, probably.
We'd all like to plant a seed and have it up the next day and get the fruit off it the day after, you know. So we're all like that. So you've got to have patience. And these these sort of things can take years.
Yeah, and it make all sense when you share that the moment you feel your real emotion of soul emotion, you feel connected, because that's the only moment where we are connected to ourselves. So the other moment we cannot be connected. We are not even connected to ourselves.
And that's one of the ways that I tell. You know, it's almost like a flavour of the emotion or stuff, and I you know, vast majority, 99.9% of my feelings and emotions are all that I've created. You know, so it's a relative rarity that I'm feeling the real thing. You know, but when I do, I just one of the things I've done is cultivate an opportunism, where sort of like being open to seeing it first off when something like that happens, when it's those 1 in 1,000 emotions that is real. Firstly, I need to be open to recognise it as such, and then I just have to go, this is something real here, feel the reality of it, and then just gently let it take me, you know, just gently
surrender
like this, rather than try to jump in on top of it, you know, because as
Sure.
soon as you try and jump in on it, the imagination gets involved, you know, and the imagination goes, I know what this is, I know exactly what this is, I'll magnify it.
Nourish it.
Nourish it, but the imagination doesn't really know what it is, it just thinks it does. And so you end up just going off on this sidetrack. You've got to allow it to do its thing.
Really surrender to it.
It is surrender and allowing, that sort of thing.
Embracing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you often pray, and what for? And do you notice sometimes your prayer got answered, sometimes not? And so what do you experience with prayer?
I don't pray as a regular thing, because then it feels forced. I pray when I feel like praying. So sometimes I might go for days on end without praying. And other times I might pray while I'm driving, or even pray in my sleep, you know. It's like I've cultivated this opportunism when I'm in a particular place where I'm open to it and I have some desire for it, then I try and recognise that and try and go with it and allow it to happen. So
what do you pray for in this moment?
Let's see, I remember praying in my sleep last night, and that was about I think letting it happen, helping me to let go and let it take me where it wants to take me, rather than me deciding and trying to push it in any direction, you know. So often my prayer is I don't believe in this sort of prayer where you have to know what you want, you know.
Is that prayer for help, or prayer for truth, or prayer for love?
It's mostly prayer for help.
For help.
Yeah, well, that's these days. I did spend a couple of years praying for God to help show me the truth about myself. And that's when I was forced to confront the fact that I wasn't in nearly as good a condition as what I thought I was.
So your prayer got answered?
Yeah, that happened over a long period of time. Sometimes prayers, you have to throw it in a lot because you're not open to the answer at the time. And so you have to throw it in a lot, and then at some point, just when you're in a particular emotional condition where you might be open to the answer, then something might happen where the answer comes to you. So there's that sort of answer to a prayer. But then I have other prayers sometimes where I get an instantaneous response, and it's usually just something subtle, you know, like I can pray for divine love or something like that, and I don't say I get divine love, but what I get is a subtle change of feeling within myself, and I take that as being all that I'm capable of receiving at that particular time, you know. And but I also do a lot of prayer from the perspective that God knows me better than I do, and as a consequence knows what's good for me better than I do. So I don't tend to arrogantly think that I know what I need, you know, and that I should be praying for this because this is what I need now and God should give me this now. So I tend to try to be more open than that. So often it's just a prayer for help.
And the answer,
and that's it.
And that's it. But the answers, and sometimes they come emotionally. But is that always the case? Like the answer of your prayer, which form it takes? Does it take different forms to you?
It's hard to tell the difference in terms of what's coming from God and what's coming from my guide. Because my guide seems to be there listening in on and feeling what I'm feeling, and will often try and help me in various ways. And so I think if the answer is coming from my guide, then often it's knowledge. It's often an understanding of what's going on.
Is that words?
Huh?
Is that you hear words, or
no? It's never words.
It's how like how you receive knowledge.
It's like an understanding. You know, if I'm asking for a question, I get an understanding of the answer.
So do you reckon that God might use your guide, who is you have a closer connection to, as a way to answer your prayer?
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that all? Do you have sometimes your prayer answers through law attraction even? So things that happen in your life or in your day, and
yeah, but that's a small minority.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your guide.
Sometimes it happens. Mostly, I think it either comes in a feeling at the time, which I think probably comes straight from God, or if it's delayed, it's probably my guide seeing that, now he's open to an answer to that, and putting the answer in, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you in your life, your guide has been very instrumental in terms of
especially now.
helping
I'm
you.
getting my relationship with my guide's improving all the time, and I'm getting more trust in my guide.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You know, in Divine Truth teaching, there is one part of the teaching is really encouraging us to connect to our natural ability. Well, we are told that as child we normally can, we might forget it, but we are told naturally we can sometimes see or hear people who have passed and have interaction with them as a child, and then growing up we closing that ability to talk with people who have passed and keep living in another a parallel world called the spirit world.
For me, it's never in words.
It's never in words.
It's I can't do that sort of mediumship where you can ask a question and I will let somebody talk through me and give the answer. That never works for me. I might be mediumistic, but I'm not that sort of mediumistic. What I get always comes in the form of understandings and feelings and stuff like that, and then if I put it into words, like for example, when I first started interacting with my guide, really realising I had a guide, and remember I said I had a website that I used to put my channelings on. What I used to do was I'd get an answer to a question or something, and I would write down what I thought was the answer. And then while I'm writing it down, my guide would be watching what I'm written, and I'd get a feeling, no, that's not quite right. So I would change it. That's not quite right either. So I changed it a bit more. Ah, that's right. And then I'd go on like that, you know. But it was always my words. It was just my guide would be going, yes, that's right. No, that's not.
And so you are sensible enough to feel your guide telling you that's right or that's not right.
Telling's not the right word.
No,
it's a feeling of that's right or that's not right. Yeah.
Yes. Which is not obvious for people.
Yeah.
So you are sensitive enough to that. And for the people who do not know what a guide is, well, a guide is just someone who has passed and who has more knowledge or love, and who love us and care for us. It's like a bit of a spiritual teacher, could say.
Well, something that I've learnt relatively recently is that I've seen how my guide is just like me. Like, I have this passion for discovering things for myself, and my guide has that. And my guide has taken it a lot further than what I have. So my guide has been where I am now. So he was probably autistic in some way or other when he was on the planet. And he knows how to make progress from this point. And it's very interesting. Would you like me to tell you a little bit about my guide?
Yes, please. Oh, if you feel that it might help other people just to get closer to their own guide, you know.
When I first started experiencing my guide, it was long before I met AJ. 12 years before I met AJ, when I was, doing meditation and all that sort of stuff. I used, after work, when I was working in this clinic in Sydney, Ayurveda clinic in Sydney, I used to go up into North Head National Park and sit in this beautiful cove where there was overhanging rocks overhanging the water, and you could see the city of Sydney in the distance over the harbour, but it's all completely natural. I used to sit there for an hour or two and until it got dark, and then I'd walk back in the dark. And I was often sitting there and I'd be contemplating questions about the cove, and like, for example, the cove, I've swum in the cove and it's very shallow sloping, and it faces the opposite direction to what you'd expect. It's inside North Head, inside the harbour, but it faces inside rather than out. So I got the feeling that there was something about this cove with respect to whales, and this is what I was getting. I had like wondering about this cove, about the setup of the cove and stuff like that, and answers would sort of come as to things like with respect to whales, that it's really gently sloping, and so whales could mistake that cove as an exit out of the harbour. Because later on, my guide showed me, I was sitting up on a rock one time, and it showed me, I kept looking up into the forest up in here, and my attention kept going back up into there, and I thought, gee, there must be something up in there, I better go. Because by this time I realised I was interacting with what I thought at the time was a nature spirit. I thought it was a nature spirit that, I'd been into the Findhorn stuff and all the nature spirits. I thought, there's a nature spirit lives here, and I'm communicating with this nature spirit. And so I walked up into the bush and into the area where my attention had kept being drawn to, and there was an Aboriginal rock carving on this rock. It was about 3 metres long, and it was a carving of a whale. And on one side of the whale there was an Aboriginal family, and there was the man holding up a boomerang like this, holding a boomerang like that, with one foot like this, and there was a spear, stuff like that, and there was a couple of kids and a woman, and carved into the rock. And on the other side of it was what was obviously a rowboat with some white men, and you could see shorts. They had marks across here where they, where the shorts, so they weren't wearing shirts. They just had shorts like this with guns, like this. So there's a rowboat with guns, and so my guide had led me to this, and which I was totally unaware was there, and nobody else knew about it. I actually researched it later on, and nobody knew about the existence of this. And my guide told me that this was the first meeting of the Aborigines in that area with the whites, and that they'd met over a whale carcass that had been washed up onto the beach on this particular beach. Because it was so slow sloping, the whale's sonar didn't get reflected back. So the whale thought that there's a way out. It was heading east because the harbour faces east. It thought it was heading out of the harbour into the open ocean. But because it didn't get sonar back, it thought there must have been a way through. And until it eventually got stranded and couldn't get through. And then it died, washed up on the beach. The whites had sailed past and seen this whale washed up on the beach, so they rowed in to have a look at it. And while they were there looking at this whale on the beach, they encountered this family of Aborigines. And the Aborigines, it was such a big thing for them because it was their first encounter with white men. They went up into their sacred site and did a carving to record the experience, and yeah, it was a pretty incredible experience.
So when did you realize it was your guide?
Well, at the time, I was living on the Sunshine Coast north of Brisbane and just flying down to Brisbane, to Sydney about once every few weeks, and I'd stay a week or two down there, and then I'd come back up again. And after I'd gone back to home after one of these things, I started having the same interactions in the shower, funnily enough. And I realised that I really relax when I'm in the shower and let go when I'm in the shower. I really enjoy having a nice shower. And that relaxation allowed me to open up to my guide, And previously I thought it was just a nature spirit in that area. And then when I got home, I started having the same interactions in the shower. And I'm going, wow, this can't be a localised nature spirit. What is it, And I explored what was going on because I thought, how am I getting this information, And I just tried to observe what was going on. And what I saw was that I'd have a question, and what I found was I would start thinking about the question and thinking about potential answers. And what would happen it was like I could feel something was going with my thought process. So it was my thoughts, but something was steering my thoughts into a particular direction, which I realised that they wouldn't have gone into that direction otherwise. So I was my thoughts were being steered into directions that wasn't normal for me, and it was just getting this little... So it was my thoughts, the answer was coming through in my own feelings and my own thoughts, but it was just being gently nudged and guided into the right direction, And I can't say it was like a conversation, but it was like I'd have a desire for an answer, and an answer would come through these sort of mechanisms, or I would get this thing that AJ calls a download, where I would just get an understanding of the answer, all in one book, like that.
Something you didn't have a clue.
It would just
before.
come to me, and I would just suddenly go, that's what's going on.
Something you had no idea before. It just came like a new knowledge. And it's not words. It's just.
And it's not words.
It's just like a knowledge.
And what I find is that I'm not always open to answers. I can have a question, and I'm not always open, and it can take weeks to get an answer. My guide has to wait until I'm receptive, and then the answer will come, and I'll go, that's the answer to that question.
Do you know your guide? So there is probably also with all the person that take care of our physical body and help us to be well and safe.
Oh, you're talking about a guardian angel?
A guardian angel.
Yeah, I got one of them as well.
You are aware of it?
Yeah, I'm aware of the effects of it because I've had things happen to me. Like I've done a lot of dangerous things in my time. You know, paragliding, hang gliding, spearfishing with sharks, and jumping out of planes and all that sort of stuff. You know, and like even simple things that go back to my high school times. You know, like I could be riding my bicycle down this big steep hill, coming home from school, and the front wheel has sort of moved a bit, so it's clipping the forks, you know, and it's going, and I think, oh, I'll just give it a kick to push it back in the right spot, you know, and of course, dumb thing to do. I went like that, you know, and foot goes, wearing shoes, foot goes in there, jams the front wheel stops dead. I'm going down this great damn hill, over the handlebars I go, you know. Next thing you know, the next thing I'm aware of is running down the footpath, dragging my bicycle behind me like this, you know. Somehow or other I had stepped off the bicycle as I'd gone over the handlebars, landed on the footpath and just was running and managed to be running flat out as I hit the ground so that I didn't even fall over. And I kept one hand on the handlebars and I'm dragging the bicycle behind myself. And I'm going, how did that happen? And I've had a few
You
things.
don't remember what happened in between?
You know, like I said, I must have, as I went over, this is just, I don't remember it,
Yes.
but I must have, my guardian angel must have just helped me to be able to, as I went over the handlebars, to be able to put my foot out, to land the right way, and to just be running flat out. Like, I don't think it was anything magical. I wasn't magically transformed off the bicycle. And it was just like, was some sort of guidance to do the right thing. You know, and I've had those sort of experiences a lot of times in my life, you know, where I just do the right thing in a really dangerous situation where I could be really severely hurt and just do the right thing.
So you were influenced in the right direction somehow. Yeah.
That doesn't mean I didn't have accidents. Like I had one big accident when I was hang gliding. And that was like a law of attraction to show me I was being an idiot. You know, sometimes you need something like that to happen to show you.
Before there is a bigger
You're deceiving yourself, you know, because I felt, see, when you're doing something like hang gliding, you always have something that gets your adrenaline going, you know, and they would happen, and 99 times out of 100, that's all it is, you know. You manage to get through the situation. And the particular situation was where I used to dive down like this and come up and go through the top of a tree as I did a big turn and would go back like this, you know. I was doing these big things like this. And but then one time I was, what happened was that I got addicted to adrenaline. And so I started to, my self-deception led me to believe I was being safe when I wasn't. And it's because adrenaline is different to any other drug in that when the adrenaline's pumping, it's intensely unenjoyable. But after the dangerous situation is past, you get this flash of euphoria afterwards. So most drugs, you get the euphoria when you're on the drug, and then afterwards you get this down. But adrenaline's the opposite. You get the down when you're on it, and then the euphoria after it. But you can still get addicted to it. You get addicted to the euphoria after the drug rather than... So anyway, that, because I was having these dangerous things happen, I started believing that my skills had got to such extent I could do these things and be safe about it, you know. And then one time I had this big accident that I ended up spraining both ankles and couldn't even walk for a couple of weeks. Couldn't even use crutches for a couple of weeks. I had to have thongs strapped onto my knees because my knees got so sore from crawling, you know. And then after a couple of weeks, I could use, because it was both ankles, I couldn't put any weight on them, and I was on crutches. And
so, what was your guardian angel role in that, if any?
That was a law of attraction event to show me that I was being an idiot. And after that, my attitude to safety completely changed, you know. And so, like, my guardian angel stopped me getting really badly hurt.
How he did that? Or she? You reckon?
I just landed the right way. You know, they say, you know, knowing how to fall. You know, I just landed the right way. I landed on rocks. It was a rock platform out in front of a headland, and I landed on rocks. It was my own stupid decision making, thinking I was being safe when I wasn't, and I was ended up having to land on these rocks in a downdraft, in behind. The wind was blowing over them, coming down there, so the glider just went straight at the rocks, you know, and I just had to do this, and just, you know, I was lucky that I landed the way that I did, and that all I did was sprain my ankles when I could have killed myself. You could quite easily die from something like that.
So really likely it was something that your guardian angel knew would happen and help you to go through, and it was probably help you to save your life for the next time, because you become a bit more
So like the guardian
cautious.
angel doesn't necessarily stop bad things happening to you, but it does it in a way, it helps you in a way that
you survive.
Yes, you get the opportunity to learn from it.
Yes. Awesome. And just having a look at the time, and look a bit, because there is only 19 minutes left.
Okay.
So, we might have to switch the battery, but it's alright. Awesome. Question about sleep states. So, for people who do not know the terms, so it seems that every night we go to sleep, and during the night, when there is a deep sleep, our spirit body can just go out of our physical body, sleeping, and just start to experience life in the spirit reality, in the spirit world, and have a real life. Keep living. And so it seems that everybody has that every night, but when we wake up, we forget about what's happening, and sometimes we have dream, but there is something else in quality, real life that's happening, obviously. And my question is about if you have any experience of that, and if you can share, and also how to sort out what's the difference between a dream and a sleep state.
I feel that sort of a description is pretty simplistic. In my experience, the majority of my dreams are about helping me to deal with emotions and things. And you know, my prayer about such thing might be helping it. So I'm talking about now. Although there was a time in the past where I remember I tried not to remember my dreams because it worked too well and I was confusing my dreams with the reality. I could go to people and say, "Oh, didn't we have a good time last week when we did this?" And they go, "No, we didn't do that." And I went, "Oh, I must have dreamt it, you know."
But is that a dream then you are talking about there?
No, well, no. In real life, I'd go to people in real life and say, "Didn't we have a good time when we did this last week?"
Okay.
And they'd say, "No, we didn't do that." And I'd go, "Oh, it must have been a dream."
Or sleep states experience.
Yeah, or sleep state experience. Whatever. But anyway, it made me feel like an idiot. And so I made an effort to not remember my dreams. But anyway, these days, my attitude to dreams and things is about emotions. Is that for me, the way I look at my life now is everything in my law of attraction, and dreams are included, is an opportunity for me to grow in some way or other. So my dreams come to me in a way that's an opportunity for me to grow. So if I wake up in the middle of a dream, you know, as you do, rather than thinking about the plot of the story in the dream, I think about what were the emotions I was feeling in the dream.
Yes.
And that's been a lot more useful for me than, like, other people. They try and analyse their dreams. Oh, this happened and that happened and all these other sort of things happened, and to me, that's useless. But for me, it's what was I feeling, you know, and that sort of stuff. And because I seem more open to feeling my feelings when I'm asleep than when I'm awake. And especially in the dozing state when I'm first waking up in the morning, you know. So I have enough awareness I have probably more awareness, I think, from talking to other people. I perhaps have more awareness during my dreams than a lot of people. I seem to be able to control, make intelligent decisions during my dreams more than what most people do. Like I said last night, I was actually praying in my dream, and that was a conscious decision to pray in my dream, because what was going on in my dream seemed like one of those opportunities where, at this point, it would be good to pray about something like that. So in my dream, I could make an opportunity. I made use of the opportunity to pray. You know. So this stuff about we go to the spirit world and we have a different life in the spirit world and stuff.
You don't have
I can't say that I can relate to it on those terms. It may be happening.
Yes, you don't remember.
But it feels like it's not the whole story. That's a very simplistic thing.
Well, it's important to clarify what the Divine Truth teaching talk about. It's a dream is just it's a law of attraction. It's an emotional message from our soul to become aware of something to help us. While the sleep states is just our normal life, but it's a normal life in the spirit world. So we keep living, we keep creating event in the good direction, in the wrong direction, degrading our soul, improving our soul. While dream is just getting aware of what's happening in us already now. So that's two totally different things. And it might be some part of sleep state you are talking about, and some part is dream. But you know.
Yeah, because like.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, there may very well be two completely different things going on during a sleep.
That's the teachings about the sleep state experience.
I remember something that happened in a dream last night, which was pretty big, which is why I remember it. It felt like I encountered some sort of evil influence that wanted me to go into some wanted to push me into some horrible experience within myself, you know. And I can remember thinking at the time that, it's good to go with the emotions, feel my emotions and just let it all happen. And then I thought, no, this is different. This is different. This is something that's wanting to push me into this. And I went, no, I'm not going to go there. And I chose to go, don't want to hear from you. I don't want anything. And then it sort of went away.
Yeah.
And I just went to normal dreaming later on, you know. So that may have been the sort of otherworld sleep state thing that you're talking about. Yeah.
It's hard to know, to discern. Actually, it's
and to me, it doesn't seem that important. To me, it's just about what benefit can I get out of it for my own growth.
Yes, and it seems that the most we can remember the best it is, because it's all knowing more about ourselves and discovering more about ourselves and our true life, because we might do some things in the sleep that we don't do when we are awake. And,
maybe, but I think there's because there's the possibility that dreams are different from sleep state experiences, and dreams seem to be, to me, seem to be more about what scientists would say about it, in that it's like emotional release.
Yes.
And because the evidence for that is how things get incorporated into your dreams. If you're dreaming about something and some noise happens in your environment, you tend to change the plot of the dream to incorporate that noise into the dream. So it's like your brain is manufacturing the plot around some emotions that you're feeling, that are emotions that are bubbling up or something. And I find, and I used to do this a lot in my waking state, that I used to manufacture thoughts to fit my feelings. And I'd be driving along, and I became aware I was trying to think of something that, why am I trying to think about something? And I realised I'm trying to find a rational thought to have that is why I would feel this feeling. You know, I'm having the feeling, and we tend to think that a feeling comes from an action, something we do, something that happens to us or whatever. So it would be like, oh, I'm having this feeling, there must be something causing this feeling. So I'd be trying to create a storyline that I could believe was causing the emotions. And I think that's what happens in dreams. And that it's emotions coming up. And we're creating a story to fit the emotions. But it's the emotions that are important, not the story. But sleep state, there may be a different thing there, and I think it's probably really easy to get confused between the two.
Especially, it seems to me that the sleep states, it's more in the deep phase of our sleep, and the dreams where we remember, it's often more where we are close to awake and we are in between worlds.
What scientists would call REM sleep, when your eyeballs are going like this. That's probably... That's when you're dreaming. Whereas the sleep state experiences we're talking of might be when you're in deep sleep.
Deep sleep, and our body is just gone. It might be. I think I will change, probably for the last question, I will change the battery, so we go to the end without interrupting in the middle of a question. That would not be fun. Oops. Reflex from football. Before it's touching, like...
Football or hacky sack?
What is that? Hacky sack?
Hacky sack. Where's that? That's where they have this little ball sack of things, and you always keep it off the ground, and you keep kicking.
Oh that's a sport. Yeah, you can do in Africa or South America. It's a hard sport. Yeah, to practice agility with the feet. Yes. Okay. Lovely. We are getting there. Okay. Good. So we don't need to check at the time. We are. Okay, so next question. So one of the major, a central part of the Divine Truth teaching is to learn to develop a personal relationship with a personal God, have you developed such a relationship? How would you describe your connection with a personal God?
it's difficult to know the difference between a relationship with God and a relationship with my guide. And I did mention something to AJ one time about a feeling that felt like that, and he said, "Oh no, that's your guide you're relating to there." So that's made me think that it's difficult to know the difference. So, but I have been doing a lot of prayer with respect to asking God to help me have an experience, have a relationship with God, you know.
Yes.
Because you can't love something that you don't have a relationship with, you know. So there's no way in the world I can love God because I don't have a good enough relationship with God. So for me, if something's not working, I have to go back down one. So if I'm not having a relationship with God, I pray for having a better relationship with God. And if that's not working, I'll try for something that is further down that might help me get to that point.
To have a desire to experiment with it, at least.
Yeah, I do that with everything. If something's not working, I go, well, I have to take a step back, and I'm putting the cart before the horse. I have to go back down one, you know. And if that doesn't work, I have to go, okay, well, I need to develop the desire, to have the desire to do this, you know.
And you first need to have maybe some faith or some belief that it might be a nice and loving God. Because how can you have a desire to have a relationship with someone you don't even know it? So you cannot love it, but it's hard to develop the desires to want to know him, really, if you don't know him.
Considering those experiences I've told you about my guardian and my experiences with my guide, my guide has given me some awesome stuff over the time. Doesn't mean I'm not always resistant to it. I can just be just as resistant to my guide as anything. But what was I going to say there?
Well, he has helped you in the sense of having some faith, helping you having a desire to know God?
Yeah, so it's manifestly obvious to me that there's big shit happening outside of the physical. That there's things that are organising things for me that are helping me with my life. And you know, from all the way back from my high school days, and even younger, it's like there's been this progression of things happening for me that have been like designed as teaching experiences to help me get to where I am now.
So you talk about big shit, but it's positive things, you mean?
Yeah, and
it's not shit.
and well, even if it was big shit, it was positive in the sense that what I needed to learn was I was being an idiot. You know, that's positive. You know, if you learn you're an idiot, it gives you an opportunity to not be an idiot.
If it's true, yeah.
yeah. If you're being stupid, if you're in self-deception, it's good to have it pointed out to you in a really, you know, you learn the lessons better if you're in it, in the shit, than if somebody just says, "Oh, yes, you've got this problem." You know, like with that hang gliding accident I spoke about, I couldn't go hang gliding for 3 months. And during that period, I went through my addiction to adrenaline and realised what the addiction to adrenaline had done to my intellect, how I believe, how the self-deception I had been in to make me believe I was behaving safely when I wasn't. And since that particular episode, I've been really aware of the possibility of how I can deceive myself.
So, can you share a little bit how your guide is helping you to have a desire for a relationship with God?
How my guide is helping me to desire to have a relationship with God. I think because of my relationship with my guide and the stuff I get from my guide, it really has given me the feeling that there's something outside myself that has an enormous amount of love for me. But that's my guide. But then when I go to the guardian angel type experiences, then that can't be just the guardian angel. You know, why do I have a guide which is just like me? Why do I have a guardian which is capable of doing these things for me? You know, there must be something above that which is orchestrating all this. You know, and that they are just the mediators of something that loves me so much personally, to want to help me personally with all the little shit along the way. So I think I have got that far to realise that there is something out there that really loves me and really cares for me. What I don't have at this stage is the personal, you know, relationship. So I think I've taken the first step, but I'm still working on it, and I'm praying on that.
And it will never be a physical relationship.
No, so, because and it's going to be even more obtuse, if you like, than my relationship with my guide, because my guide is a person. So I'm having a relationship with a person, and so is my guardian is a person.
You mean they have a spirit body in the sense, but a person can be a soul according to the definition.
Yes, but God is something completely different. So it stands to reason that a relationship with God is not going to be like a relationship with a person. It might seem that way, but that's our creation if it seems like that way.
And God might not be so different of you in some respect.
God would have a lot in common with my soul.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm only just starting to see what's a soul-based emotion and what's a real emotion. So I've got a lot to learn and experience. Like maybe before I can get to have a relationship with God, I need to have a relationship with my own soul. And having a better relationship with my own soul, that, because my soul is created in the image of God, that might give me the stepping stone to have the relationship with God.
That's logical, what you say. That's just logical. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Would you believe you have received once or more God's love?
Once.
Could you a bit share about your...
Sure. And even then, I suspect that it was facilitated by my guide. The experience felt like I was looking through a keyhole at experience of divine love. So I didn't get overwhelmed by the divine love or anything. So it was only this snippet, looking through a keyhole at it. But even looking through that keyhole, the big thing I remember about it is that it was transformative. What I experienced through that tiny little keyhole was that when you experience divine love, it pulls the rug out from under all your shit. You know? And in that place, I could see that how bloody stupid it is to entertain all this crap. You know? It's just useless. It doesn't serve me whatsoever. And while I was there, receiving that tiny little bit of divine love, it was like all my shit got washed away. And I felt like what it feels like to not have all this shit within myself, you know? And it was really transformative, because for weeks and months afterwards I felt different from that one little experience. It was I got the smallest taste of divine love, and even that was transformative, and and that transformation had a massive effect on me for a few weeks, and then it just sort of tapered off over a few months, you know.
So what brought you to this moment where you had the pure desires to have a taste for?
I don't remember what brought it on. And I don't think I was praying for divine love at the time. But that said, that doesn't mean I didn't have a desire for it.
Exactly.
Because prayer is just
yes.
desire, really.
Yes.
It's soul-based desire.
Yes.
And so, you know, I can have desire for things and they manifest, you know. Yeah. And you don't think of it as prayer, but desire really is. Yeah.
It is. It is. Absolutely. Thank you. How has your knowledge of your relationship with self developed since you have discovered divine truth and experience with it?
I thought I was a very honest person, and in one sense I was. In the physical world, I was very honest, you know, like I wouldn't even take a pen home from work. And I can remember as a child, I once stole a lolly out of a shop, and I felt so guilty about it that I never did it again. Never stole anything since that time, you know. And so on that physical outward level, I was really, really honest, much more so than most people. And I think people with Asperger's do tend to be more honest in that way. But what I've realised is there's two sorts of honesty. There's that sort of physical honesty and there's an emotional honesty. What I wasn't being was honest with myself about my own feelings and about the nature of myself. And so I've had to realise that, hey, there's this whole new level of honesty which I have to develop. I need to be aware of my own self-deception and be honest with myself about why I'm feeling this emotion and why I'm being motivated to do this sort of thing, you know. Motivation is something that to me is a tool. You know, you can say you've got to feel your emotions, but for me it's also about exploring my motivations, you know, because why am I motivated to do this or not do this, you know?
Which are emotional nature.
Yes, but we tend to say a motivation is something different to an emotion, and it is. There's something that's... An emotion doesn't need to be compelling the way a motivation is. So motivations are probably connected to emotions at a much deeper level. They're connected to your real emotions at a much deeper level, because a lot of those motivations you can't resist, you know, addictive type stuff. You can't resist, you can't use this. You can temporarily, but then it breaks out and you get rebellious and you know, also, or it breaks out in some other way or something or other, you know. So to me, motivations, looking at my motivation for things is a really important tool.
Yeah. Another part of yourself, what we learn from Divine Truth, is about soulmate, things that we are half of a soul actually, and there is another person who is you are the half, so that's another concept. Have you experiment about that? Have you any idea or any relationship with your soulmate? What have you something to share about?
Before I met AJ, I realised that I had some sort of wisdom that a lot of people didn't have, you know, and that I was getting this relationship with my guide and stuff like this, and was posting this stuff on the internet and things, and I realised that I had some insight into myself and into the world and everything like that, but I also realised that that's almost completely lacking when it comes to relationships with people, loving relationships with people, and it's As a consequence, I don't have feelings about soulmate issues. Like Jen may very well be my soulmate. It'd be nice if she was, but I can't say I have real feelings on the issue. She's convinced I am, and she feels that AJ's given her feedback that we are, but people tend to read things into what AJ says, you know. If they want to believe something, they'll read into what AJ says something that verifies that belief, you know. I think quite a few people that believe AJ's told them that they're soulmates might be doing that, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I can't really say much. It is the big blank in my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you a desire to discover? Not yet.
No, the desire's not there. Which is why the blank's there.
Yeah, you must start with desiring to know ourselves first. And to,
I have to start with something that I might have some seed of a desire for, and there's not a seed of a desire for that.
Okay. Have you feelings toward the environment that evolved in the last 13 years? Or you love of the environment? Care?
I've always had a real love for the environment, especially since I became associated with my guide. I became aware of my guide. Like, before I met AJ, as I said, I was doing on my little domestic property effectively the same thing I was doing here. You know, my entire backyard was mulched and was vegetables, and I had fruit trees planted all around the place. And in the front yard, I used to go into new development areas and dig up natives before they got bulldozed, and I planted up my whole front yard with natives and let the grass grow long and all sorts of things. And it got so good that I even had a national park ranger turn up once and ask me if he could collect seed out of my front yard, because he wasn't allowed to collect seed out of the national park. I basically recreated a national park in my front yard, and that was all before I met AJ. And so what I'm doing now is just an elaboration of that process. You know, so I think I've always had a love for the environment and for ecosystems, and had a feeling how I've always been amazed at how people feel they have to be in there helping it all the time, you know. And I've always gone, hey, but these things took care of themselves for billions of years, for millions of years before we turned up. And now we turn up and we think we've got to be in there doing this and doing that and doing all these things to help these things, you know. They're quite capable of taking care of themselves. All we need to do is a little bit of editing. We might maybe speed up the process a little bit, because sometimes there's just some little thing you can do that can help a lot, you know. Like with my veggie garden in the backyard in those days, I realised that the things that could help plants the most was spreading seed. So I used to just let vegetables go to seed, grab the seed and just go, you know, and just that was being of enormous help to them, you know, because otherwise the seed would just end up here, you know. So I had things like broccoli coming up in the lawn and rocket growing in the cracks in the concrete and stuff like that, you know. And what I'm doing here is just the next logical extension of that in a much bigger place.
Okay, good, thank you. Have you ever been depressed or suppressed about not improving, changing, growing in love? And why is that? And did you take medication? Or what did you do then? Like stagnating in your own sense, I mean, yeah.
Basically, I've whenever something like that has happened, I've gone back to what I need to do at a deeper level. You know, if I feel like if something like that is going on, I'm putting the cart before the horse. That it's because I don't want to do the intermediate stuff and I'm aiming for this, that it's not happening. And so I have to step down. It's why, like, I've gone back to the AJ's very first teachings, that it's all about desire to feel, you know. And
it's a very, very straight and wise answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
It's a way. It's a good advice.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because, you know, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the leader of the Transcendental Meditation movement, even though it was pretty much a natural love path, he still had some really great wisdom that's very applicable. The natural love path, the divine love path incorporates the natural love path. And one thing he said was, if you want to build a skyscraper, you first have to dig a very big hole. And I've realised that, okay, the skyscraper we want to build is of love. But if you try and build love just from where you are, you build up this thing without a foundation and it's just going to fall over. And you realise you're in stagnation. And what you've been doing is a waste of time. So you have to go back and dig a hole, you know. You have to start digging into your own shit and to build this foundation. And you have to dig down basically till you hit bedrock. And only then can you start building up. And it takes a long time before anything appears above ground level. So if you're saying growing in love is your skyscraper, well, it feels like you're going backwards because you're digging into the ground and you're going down here and you're not growing in love at all. All you're doing is working on creating a foundation to be able to grow in love. And then once you've got down deep enough to get to the bedrock, you can start building up that, and then eventually something starts to poke above the ground level, and that's when you start to see that somebody's growing in love. You know, and I think that's why you look at all the divine truth people around the place, and they don't appear any more loving than the average Joe Blogg walking down the street. And that's because we're all working on digging this bloody great big hole, and in the meantime, we're just as unloving as everybody else.
It's a journey of learning patience and understanding.
That it's a process.
It's a process.
And you have to do this before you do that. And you have to experience that before you experience that, you know. That it's this serial progression of things happening.
And when we get this moment of depression, it's like we have higher expectation that what we are desirous to do.
Yeah,
so
it's like we've been living on wishful thinking and we've suddenly realised we're an idiot because we've been behaving, it's all wishful thinking, and our whole building has fallen over because we didn't build a suitable foundation for it. We tried to grow in love when we didn't have the foundation.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Have you a big part of the journey is to discover ourselves, and there are nice aspects, but there are also not very nice things to look at, and like our addiction, the things we want from the world, and so on, to feel better, and so what I've been trying to do, and I see a lot of people doing, is like, oh, addiction is not good, I suppress addiction, and then get angry about it, angry about the world, and that I don't get what I want, and so on. And some people get so angry that they just leave the way. They just don't want, and they want to go back to their previous life. Many people actually. And have you ever been in this place contemplating that you just want to give up? And forget about it all and just...
And what I've realised is somehow or other I need to find a way of dealing with addictions that doesn't involve willpower. And lots of times I've found that only to discover that it's not working therefore what I thought was will was actually willpower. And so I'm an idiot. I'm deceiving myself that I'm using my will well when really I'm using my willpower. And so addictions is a very interesting story, because it feels to me that we're addicted to things because we have a desire to be addicted to something. And we have to deal with that desire first and have to change that desire. And it seems like an addiction is like a weed, you know, and if you just pull it out, another one will grow, you know. And what you have to do is make some fundamental change that other things grow such that there's no longer any room for the weeds, you know. And so for me, my personal way of dealing with addictions is, you know, AJ might say, you're addicted to this, or, you know, you've got this issue, rather than just changing my behaviour, which is easy, but what happens is that I end up rebelling against it, and I end up going even further into the addiction, you know. Either that, or I just numb myself to it, and then I'm just numb, and that's no good either. That's when you get depressed, when you get numb. And so what I feel like I've got to do is, first step, intellectual awareness that I have an addiction. Second step is to just not use willpower to stop the addiction, but instead explore the addiction, to explore my motivation. And so, to a significant extent, I indulge the addiction, and but try to cultivate the awareness of what's going on, of what's my motivation here, what's going on here, you know, and just trying to work my way down through the causative layers of it, you know, in an experiential, emotional way rather than an intellectual, analytical way, you know. And it seems like eventually you can reach a point. It's like skeletons in the closet, you know. If you can expose those skeletons in the closet to the sunlight, then these are the causes of your addiction. If you can just expose them to the sunlight, then they just evaporate. And like my guide has given me glimpses of it, you know, and I'm not there yet, but I think I'm making progress in that direction. Has given me glimpses that if you can really, all you need to do is be aware of all the way down. And it's like you've got to explore the addiction and explore all the way down so that you get to know it backwards. You get to know how it works and everything. And when you get right down there, once you fully understand the addiction, it just evaporates like into thin air.
Have you an example of that? Or?
Temporary examples of it, you know, which I think my guide has helped me to give me faith to keep going where I'm going, you know. Like, just here's an example of internet addiction. You know, I realised I had an addiction to the internet on Facebook, checking everybody and all that sort of stuff, you know. And then I had a law of attraction where my satellite internet packed up, and it was going to cost me $1,000 to fix it. And I went, oh, here's an opportunity to not have internet for a while and see what happens, you know. And so I still would get on the internet on my mobile phone. I don't have mobile reception at home, so whenever I was out, I'd be on the internet, all that sort of stuff. But and so I was just allowing it. So I guess I allowed my law of attraction to bring me an opportunity that might challenge my addiction, rather than creating the challenge. If my law of attraction brings it to me, then I'm ready for it. If my law of attraction hasn't brought it ready to me, then I'm not ready to challenge that addiction. So my law of attraction brings it to me, and then I just saw it as an opportunity, just allowed it to happen, and then, but still indulged addiction in a smaller way, namely on my mobile phone when I was away from home, because I don't have any internet at home at the moment, or for the last couple of years. And then it got to the point where I'd go somewhere and I'd get on a computer or anything, and I'd get on Facebook and I'd do a few things, and I'd go, this is a waste of time. What am I doing here? I don't want to do this. And I just turn it off, you know. And so I don't feel like I'm addicted to the internet anymore. And that's probably an easier one to get rid of because it's not lifelong.
And it can be replaced by another addiction as well.
But you know, like an addiction that I've had all my life, like TV, that's a harder one to let go of because I've had it all my life. But the internet addiction is easier because it's only been the last 20 years, you know.
Yes.
But that said, I'm starting to see that process starting to happen with the TV now.
Yes.
I've been watching a lot of TV, but lately I'm just sort of starting to get a bit sick of watching it, you know. So I don't go and do something else. I just go and sit in front of the fire, you know, and just, I'll go to bed, you know, sort of thing, you know.
So it's just you experiment about trying with your willpower, and it didn't go very well, right?
Not at all.
So that's not something you would encourage.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I got myself into enormous self-deception, believing I was using my will when I was using my willpower. Because if I don't get any results, there's got to be a reason for that, and the reason is I'm using my willpower.
Okay. Yeah, you don't really want it.
I just have to be honest with myself and say, I want this addiction.
Yes.
I don't want to get rid of it, and I'm going to have to use willpower to not indulge that addiction. Yes. So I shouldn't be using willpower. Yes. So I just have to find a way to indulge that addiction that's not too damaging to myself.
Yeah, and the very fact of just being honest, from this place you can receive help or have a desire to know why.
Yeah.
And then there is a whole other help available.
It's like, what I found was I have to, because of my nature of wanting to explore and discover things and discover for myself, it's not very difficult for me to develop that seed of a desire to want to understand my addiction and to want to explore my addiction. So that's where I start. Other people may have to start somewhere else, but that's where I can start. And it means that I don't stop the addiction.
Yeah, and most of the time it's the only things that bring us a bit of joy in our life, and we just don't even want to look at it. So starting to desire to explore it, it's already
and you know, like what I was saying earlier on in the piece about feeling that life is a struggle, you know, that's a product of every aspect of my life being about willpower rather than will, about desire, you know. And in our culture, we've been trained that willpower is what we use in everything, and willpower underlies almost everything we do, you know. And changing that over to being desire-based is not a small task.
No, and that's probably the central part of the way to God. It's to start to discover what our true desire is and just experiment with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have these teachings positively influenced, changed your life in any way, and how that?
Well, I've had the desire to be on a path like this all my life, and these teachings are just a facilitation of that. And so my feeling is that God puts within us everything we need to find our way back to God. It's built into us. It's hardwired into us. and that our emotional injuries and our culture suppresses that. But I feel like there's this little, God put this little tug in there. It's just like an elastic band, and it's a very long elastic band, and it has the most gentle little tug, you know. But it's all there, and all you have to do is, you know, that elastic band is so long and so elastic that you can run off and do anything you like, and completely ignore the presence of that elastic band. So you can go off and live a life and do anything you like, but that elastic band's just there all the time. That thing that God has built into us all the time, it's always just there. And all you have to do is just, basically, it's not so much what you do as what you stop doing. You know, you stop running around and just be still and relax and let go and surrender, and just allow yourself to be pulled in the direction by what God built inside us to do, you know?
Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said, really. You speak a lot in images. And oh yeah, I know, it's nice. So would you say, has your life become more enjoyable or more painful since you discovered divine truth? It's a hard question.
I wouldn't say it's become more enjoyable.
For the moment, yeah.
For the moment. And I wouldn't say I've become significantly more loving. But I feel like I'm getting a great deal more insight into myself and into the world in general and how things work, myself and the world. And I feel like I'm developing that foundation.
Does that bring joy?
I wouldn't call it joy at this point.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm getting occasionally a glimpse of a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm still in darkness, but right in the distance there's this little sort of light that is perhaps maybe getting a bit bigger. So I may be heading in that direction.
So there is some faith about it. It's a faith thing that...
It's faith that keeps me going. My guide gives me these experiences that I remember. I don't do journaling, but I make an effort to remember these experiences, you know. And those sort of things build up my faith. And without faith, you can't achieve anything. The faith is based on your experience. It's not this rubbishing thing that religions talk about. It's got to be based in your own experience. For me, it's the experiences that my guide gives me. You know, like that one I spoke about, divine love. Things like that are very faith.
So what would you say is your most faith-building experience?
Well, that one.
That one with the divine.
Yeah. But there's been a lot of ones. And another really good one that I got just recently. My guide gave me a glimpse of what life will be like when I'm operating purely from my soul's desire. And suddenly life's no longer a struggle. Everything can become easy and enjoyable. So I've been given that glimpse, and so that's the most recent really nice faith building thing, that yes, I'm going the right direction, I'm heading the right way. It's a long journey, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel now.
Yeah, your experience is very interesting in the sense that you allow your guide to be so instrumental in your journey, in your experiences. And I don't see, well, I see some mediumistic people, but I don't see so many people who have such a helpful relationship, because they can be so helpful, and your story is an demonstration of it. Yeah, it's not for me. I ignore it, and it's very sad, basically. And
you know, I don't know whether that's something that people with that are autistic might have more of than with other people, or whether it's something else. You know,
it depends also probably on their story. You know how much you can be very mediumistic and close it down for some reason. Something happened, you know, that you got scared or whatever, and you got completely closed. But besides that, you are maybe very sensitive and mediumistic, but you don't allow yourself. So I think it might be different. Different.
And you know, my guide has given me glimpses of what it will be like when my heart opens. And it's the proverbial, my cup runneth over and everybody around me is going to get wet.
Yes, impacted and touched by it, yeah. And you have a pretty good heart already, so it will be probably very big. Yeah, one thing that is out there very far is about, well, we hear about being at one with God. One day we'll maybe be at one with God, so it means that we'll have received lots of God's love then, and the love would have transformed our soul into a new being, and that would mean, and it's all intellectual because I have no idea what it is, but that would mean the end of any kind of suffering and just like freedom and immortality. But have you some faith that it's something that would be available one day for you and other people?
Well, I have faith from that experience, that one experience of divine love that I know that I've had. And that showed me that with even that minuscule amount of divine love, it wiped away all of the shit. And that was just a merest glimpse, you know? And if I can get through that door, put the key in the lock, open the door, and actually get into that divine love. You know, like at one minute, I have no experience of what that's like, but I've had that little experience of what divine love can do. And if divine love can do that, anything's possible.
And I see often we tend, and that's necessarily true for me, but I think for many, we tend to forget our truth building experience, or to doubt them even. And I think it's very important to remember them.
Well, I think that's the reason why AJ has talked about writing it down, or journaling,
yes.
you know.
Yeah.
But I've never done that. Instead, but I do make an effort to remember those sort of experiences.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you do some other practices that might help you in your journey of the soul into God?
Well, I've been experimenting with something just very recently that I learned from my dogs. You know, anything can be God giving us some indication of something good. And I just noticed that my dogs, they get up and they do a stretch and they do a shake, you know, and I looked at that and I went, that has got to be pure desire based. The only reason they would do that is if they desire it and if they enjoy the experience. And I thought, I've got all these aches and pains in my body because I'm 65 now, where you start getting aches. That's the age where you start getting it all. And I'm thinking, maybe I could try that. So I've just begun exploring at appropriate times, especially when I'm in bed, and I actually do it a few times during the night now. I usually do it before I get up for a pee. You know, 65, I have to get up a few times in the middle of the night for a pee. So before I get up in the middle of the night,
and you breathe at the same time?
Yeah, just, you know, just give myself a little bit of a stretch, you know, and it's like, it's connecting with my body in a way that's enjoyable. You know, and I don't force it. It's got to be enjoyable. That's the bottom line. If it's not enjoyable, so sometimes I don't do it. But if I can do it in a way that's enjoyable, and if it's enjoyable, why stop? You know? So sometimes I'll spend 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, just, and then I might stop for a bit and just feel that.
It's a kind of yoga or something.
Yeah, just feel that for a bit. Then I'm like, yeah, you know? And it's like, it's connecting me with my body in a pleasurable sort of a way. And it's like, it's giving me the opportunity to feel some pleasure in my life, of which there seems to be so little in our lives, you know. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, this is like a seed of pleasure, of feeling. You know, it's a particular type of physical feeling.
Yes.
But if I can just grow that seed for physical feeling, you know, and you know, stretches and thinks, who knows, maybe I'll be able to feel that sort of desire, that feeling about allowing myself to feel cold, or allowing myself to feel hungry, or allowing myself to feel tired. You know, all of those things which are like uncomfortable experiences.
Or sad
experiences. Or happy, yeah. So this is like, to me, it's the thin end of the wedge. If I can just allow that little seed to grow and just let it go, not force it, you know, just, if it works, why stop, you know? And it does feel like it's a successful experiment so far.
Yeah, cool. It's very, very interesting. I'm trying as well with this experiment, and I enjoy. Would you recommend listening to and engaging divine truths to others, and why?
Yes, most definitely. I think you need to be aware of the honeymoon period. And that you're very damaged, and you can start to see it as your saviour, whether the teachings as a saviour, the teachings themselves as a saviour, or as AJ as being your saviour. And so you want to watch everything that he's ever done, you know, have as much close, do every possible thing that comes up, you know. And to me, that's not taking responsibility. You know, that's wanting something outside of yourself to fix you. You know, all of that stuff is useful, but only in the sense that it gives you stuff to explore and to experiment with. You know,
personal things.
Ultimately, you have to do the work yourself. You know, AJ can't do it for you. Sitting around watching AJ's talks, having headphones on, listening to AJ's talks while you're cleaning the house, to me, that if I'm listening to an AJ talk, I want to give it my whole self. You know, I don't just want it in the background while I'm doing something else. You know, so I probably watch a lot less AJ talks than most people do, but when I do, I give it my 100% full attention. You know, and I think AJ's got an enormous amount to teach us. But ultimately, it's not so much teachings as guidance, you know. And the difference is teachings is when you're given truth and you can just take it on as that. Guidance is where somebody's showing you which way you can go, you know. And so there was a time when I considered myself a follower of AJ. And I think that's a cult member attitude now. And now I consider AJ to be one of my guides. He's my guide in the physical world, and I have my spirit guide. And the two of them are... my AJ gives me some big grand visions of futures and things to try and experiment with, whereas my guide's been where I am but has a much more intimate connection to me. AJ's limited by this incredibly limiting thing of language. Language is so limiting, it's so open to misunderstanding. It's like cramming all this stuff through a straw. You know, and you got to lose something. When you cram all of this incredible beauty of what's really going on through this tiny little channel of language, you throw away 90% of it, you know. So somehow or other on the other side, you have to rebuild all of that stuff. And the only way to do that is to explore it, you know. And it's AJ's challenge is to, and that he's still working on, he's getting better at it, but he's still working at it, is how to cram all that wonderful thing of God's truth and God's knowledge down into this tiny little thing called language, such a way that people can unpack it at the other end without distorting it and without getting it totally wrong and misunderstanding and without colouring it and filtering it and fitting it into their own beliefs and stuff like that. You know, it's an incredible challenge for him.
Incredible, yeah.
Incredible. And, you know, he's still got a long way to go, in my opinion.
Yes. And we speak always on him, but it seems that there are certain others as well who have the same challenge and who are far from.
Like I remember him saying to me once that in the first century he was teaching long before he reached at-one-ment. But once he reached at-one-ment, the quality of his teaching improved so much that people forgot about what he was teaching before at-one-ment. You know, and it shows you how much the quality of his teaching has still got to improve, because, you know, he's trying to get down to our level. You know, and his mission in the world this time around is to try and get further back down to our level. First time around, he never was lower than sixth sphere. This time he came all the way down to first sphere. However, he's still reincarnated. He's still got memories of a relationship with God. He's still got memories of how happy he can be up there in the celestial realms, and he's going to have such incredible faith because of all that stuff that we just don't have. So it's got to be an incredibly difficult thing for him. It's like he's come halfway by being reincarnated and being injured so that he's in first sphere. But it's only halfway. He still hasn't got to our level. He's still not where we are. He's still not having to start with no memories of a blissful relationship with God and without any faith whatsoever. You know, we're starting at a level much lower down, and that's got to be an incredible challenge for him. But he's getting better at it. You know, he's getting better. Yeah. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, because God built into us everything we need.
Yes.
And if we just open up to that and allow it, and even in what I see is the limited amount AJ manages to pump through that language barrier, even with that, that's still enough. That when we use that as experiments and stuff like that, and just allow God to take over, then, you know, what he's taught up until now is enough.
It's already humongous.
It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah. And it might be that if we ever become at one, now all the teaching from before at one will become much less important. It may be. Who knows?
Because he may be able to get much more down to our level, you know, relate to us in a much better way, and explain because if he can see us as we really are in the way God sees us, he might be able to just throw in the words that are necessary to trigger the things that need to be triggered.
Exactly.
Whereas at the moment, he's having to do this thing for general consumption and the future. You know? So he's still working in very general stuff.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, I think we are ending this interview, Graham.
I think it's a good spot to stop.
Yeah, I think it's a good spot. Is there anything else that you wish to share for the sake of our audience?
No, I think you've done a really good job, Pierre, and you've dragged everything out of me that could be dragged out of me.
You're tired now, probably. It's been so long, and I'm getting tired too.
Yeah.
So
it's been a very long interview, but for me, it's been very productive, and I hope anybody watching it can get something from it.
Thank you very much.